Good afternoon, Commissioner.
Good afternoon.
To Commissioner O'Grady and our guests, I do want to recognize that we are at the top of the hour. We are waiting for a quorum. I would also kindly ask that those of you that are not speaking to please leave your lines muted and your cameras turned off. You can, if you've called in, you can dial *6 to mute your phone. Thank you. We'll begin as soon as we can.
I'm here, Dean. I'm here. You're muted, sir.
I'm so good at following my own rules, aren't I? Welcome, commissioners. We are after the top of the hour. With your permission, I will hand it over to the engineer for opening comments, if that's okay.
Yep, let's proceed.
Thank you.
Well, thank you all very much, Commissioner Boyce, Commissioner O'Grady, property owners, guests, and I see that Brown Township Trustee Joe Martin has joined us as well. Thank you all for being here, even if only in the virtual sense. This is a safe way to conduct business and a probably a more efficient way than being out in the ditch watershed with our boots on, trucking through the mud as we had to do in years past.
I must say how disappointing it is to not do that, to be doing that as well. I'm very crushed by not being able to do that.
Now, if we need to, we can follow up with an on-site visit. We can always do that if you like.
No thanks, no thanks.
My name is Cornell Robertson, Franklin County engineer.
You guys can enjoy yourselves doing that, by the way.
Pardon me, Commissioner?
Just saying that you and Commissioner Boyce can enjoy yourselves doing that.
Yeah, I'm going to pass. Yeah, I'm going to pass.
Yeah, we'll do that. Okay. As I was saying, my name is Cornell Robertson, Franklin County engineer and Franklin County drainage engineer. The Franklin County Engineer's Office is an agency of action, innovation, and collaboration. working closely with the commissioners, we provide for consistent and resourceful services such as surveying, engineering, inspection, construction, road maintenance, snow and ice removal, and drainage, which is certainly what we want to focus on today. The Golfview petition is located in the southwest part of the county in Brown Township on the south side of Cole Road and Feder Road intersection and adjacent to the Thorn Apple Country Club. The petition was filed by Greg Richards, a homeowner in the watershed, and signed by 5 other property owners, including the Thorn Apple Country Club. Today's agenda consists of an overview of the ditch petition process and viewing of drone video of the Golfview ditch watershed. Then we'll open the meeting to questions and comments from the commissioners, followed by questions and comments from the public. At this time, I'd like to introduce our drainage team, and it's an honor and privilege serving with these folks. Very strong team. First, we have Jim Ramsey. He's our riparian and environmental engineer. And Kate Ratke is with us today, our drainage project engineer. So at this time, I'll turn the floor over to Jim Ramsey, riparian and environmental engineer. Jim, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Engineer Robertson. Commissioners and guests, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So as Engineer Robertson stated, I'll go through a little bit of the petition ditch law and the process that we go through, and then a little bit into this particular petition. Ohio Revised Code 6131 is for single county ditches. It's commonly known as the ditch petition law. Provides a way for us to plan and implement drainage improvements on a watershed or regional scale. These would be improvements that need more than one property owner's property to be completed and service multiple property owners or public facilities. Under the code, there are 4 primary steps. The first is that a property owner files a petition. The second is the view, which we're doing today. Then that'll be followed by the first hearing and the final hearing. The purpose of the view is really to kind of familiarize everybody with what the property owners are asking the county to do. This allows the commissioners, engineers, and everybody to get together, look at information on the project. It did include a site visit in the past, as was mentioned earlier, but now we can do that by electronic means. And then the view is followed by an amendment period if other property owners want to sign on. The purpose of that amendment period would be that if somebody had a problem that was in the watershed but was not included in what had originally been asked for, they could amend to have their problem included and also ask to have it solved with the improvement. After that, at the first hearing, the county engineer's office will file a preliminary report giving you a cost estimate, statement of feasibility, and a cost benefit opinion. This is the owner's first opportunity to testify, give you their opinion on whether they think the project is warranted or not, give concerns or support of the project. You can't make any changes to the petition after the first hearing. And if the commissioners vote to advance the project at the first hearing, then the engineer's office will begin design and the final report. Then at the second hearing, the board will hear the engineer's final report, look at the plans, view the schedule for assessments submitted by the county engineer. The landowners can again offer testimony, and ultimately the board of commissioners will vote again on whether the improvement should be implemented or not. And the board should base that decision on 3 factors stated in the code, which is the project necessary? Is it conducive to public welfare? And do the benefits outweigh the costs? After that, there is an appeal period. If there are no appeals filed, then the project moves to construction. After it's constructed, the commissioners will have fronted the county and commissioners will have fronted the money for construction. Then property owners will be assessed to recoup the cost of construction through a construction assessment. And then there is also a maintenance assessment that goes on that pays for the ongoing maintenance of this improvement. For this particular petition, the petition was filed. It was initiated by Mr. Richards and filed on March 5th. As Cornell mentioned, multiple property owners did sign the petition. We conducted a public information meeting on May 12th. That is not required by the code. It's just something we do to provide another opportunity to communicate with property owners. Then the view today, and then there will be another informational meeting prior to the first hearing. We will hold that June 16th virtually as well. And then the first hearing will be at general session on June 22nd. And then that'll be when the board votes to advance or deny the petition. This petition, or this area, really came to be when the Golfview subdivision was created. You can see in these lines down here that there was an existing field tile in place when they created the subdivision, and they tied the drainage into that. It's another group of homes built up here that we'll see on the map later, and this does come out to the road, but we're looking to see if there's an easement extended. We're not sure about that yet. The subdivision was built in 1970. Total weight watershed is 22 acres. Here is the watershed display of the area that drains to this improvement. Now this shows you the improvements that we have mapped because they were related to road drainage. So these road improvements or road storm sewers were built when this subdivision was built, and these were added when these houses were built. What's not shown is the line that runs down through here that they all tied into. Now in that plat, they called that out as a 10-inch tile. We've actually found that it's more like an 8-inch tile. And the real problem with this drainage system is actually quite simple. It's that you have a 12-inch pipe coming this way, draining into it, a 12-inch pipe coming this way, draining into it, and a 12-inch pipe this way, draining into it, and it's an 8-inch pipe. And then you have another 12-inch back here that joins into it, and it's still together through the houses here, but it's just not the right size pipe for the situation. And then down here, you can see that it's failed, and you can see where the erosion is being caused from the water running out through the field. We do have a couple of obstructions as well. To replace this, I haven't done survey or that type of thing yet. That would be after the first hearing, but I suspect this pool is probably over top of the pipe. It's an above ground pool. And as you can see, these houses are close together, and there's a fence around this house. And so this property owner is naturally concerned about the closeness of construction to the houses and the interference with her fence. Going to switch over now. Show you some short videos. This video is starting up here on Fetter Road facing south down Golfview Place. This is Mr. Richards' home, who initiated the petition. The area we're looking to improve is the pipe that runs back here, comes out to this catch basin, and then ultimately goes out across this field. And it outlets down here into Hamilton Ditch, which is another petition ditch. Now we're coming back up through Mr. Richards' property here, really following the line that the improvement would need to make. You can see there's several places where it's going to be a little tight in here. Now, these are videos provided by Mr. Richards to show the problem with the pipe being undersized. In a rain event, there's surface water flowing on a fairly small rain event going through the house. These homes have home sewage treatment systems and wells. Mr. Richards' well is over on this side, close to his house. We don't usually design systems to never have surface water flow, but it'd be nice if it just wasn't so frequently. And that concludes our videos and presentations of the problem. This project is very similar to a petition we did in about 2009 called Asbury that was in the south part of the county. Almost the exact same scenario where a subdivision was built and tied into an existing tile, and the tile was undersized, and so you had much bigger pipes coming into a smaller pipe, and so it's just really a matter of replacing that pipe from here up through here and getting to here and up to the road, about 1,325 feet probably of pipe and the associated structures. And here are some additional pictures that were taken. This one we didn't really see in the videos. This is looking out across the golf course at how the water ponds there. So basically the water is ponding on the golf course, waiting until it can get through the tile to get down there. Now, next meeting dates will be the 16th, as mentioned earlier, and then the first hearing on the 22nd. And the other informational meetings and second hearing will be scheduled at a later time, and there'll be an additional notice sent out for those. So with that, I will open it up to questions.
I got a couple questions. I've got quite a few questions. Okay, our property.
Who's speaking? Can we identify who's speaking? And
Sure.
Dean, do we need to have, does any of our speakers need to have a speaker slip filled out or anything?
Commissioner, as it's part of the process, we do not, and it's not an official hearing, so I don't normally swear anyone in. But Jim, if you could do me a favor first and stop sharing your screen so the commissioners can actually see who's speaking to them.
My camera's not working on my. It's under Louis Chan. There will be 2 Louis Chans. My husband's at work and I'm at home at the moment, so you won't get to see the video on that.
Understand. And I'm sorry, just real quick before you go, for those of you that are wanting to speak, if you could please introduce yourselves to the commissioner and clearly state your address before addressing them, that would be helpful.
Sure, no problem. My name is Kim Graham, and our address is 6810 Hardwood, and we are the property directly behind Mr. Richardson's property. And I've just got a ton of questions here. I'm kind of confused as to why we are kind of put into this situation. I've got a map here from the FEMA Flood Map Service Center. And according to this, our property is not part of the flooding area. There is a little section that is touched, that's along the easement. Our neighbor to the west of us also, it's just on the easement. We don't seem to really be a part of this. As a matter of fact, a lot of the people in Hardwood, off of Hardwood, according to this map and the other maps that I'm looking at, don't seem to be a part of that. So I'm kind of confused as to why Hardwood has been put into this. We don't have an issue whenever it rains. We just don't. And I'm confused as to how Hardwood has been put into a part of this. Can you answer how we ended up being part of this?
I can answer that. I'm going to share screen real quick here and then I'll turn it back off. So what we've defined is the drainage area is this area is water that drains into this system, and based on the Ohio Revised Code, if your water drains into the system, you benefit from the system and you're included in the petition. So it's not really taking in all of your properties, but just the back parts of your properties that drain into the system.
Okay, so that leads into another question I have. My question is how is it determined our costs? I know it's going to be spread out in our taxes. Our taxes are very high, and when we go to sell our house, I would imagine that is an issue. We gasped when we saw what our taxes were going to be when we bought the property. So how is that assessed for all us people in Hardwood? How are we going to be factored in? Because I've been told that it'll probably be our property taxes over the next 15 years. How are we factored into that? I know you can't give us a cost estimate right now, but could you give us something to try to alleviate the shock if this goes through?
Sure, and it's interesting because folks on the Asbury petition had the same concern and question and almost the same situation. And the answer is that your assessment amount, or your portion of the assessment, is based on the portion of the property that you have that drains to the system. So if only a small part of your backyard is draining to the system, that's going to be your proportion that gets shared by the assessment. So if your front yard drains out to Hardwood Drive and doesn't come into here, that would not be counted. So you actually, when we do the assessment schedule, we will look at how much and what is in there. So basically, how much is your benefit, and we attempt to calculate that based on how much water you would have contributing to the system compared to everyone else.
Okay, so you're basically looking at like maybe a half acre we live on an acre, so possibly a half acre would be assessed for us.
Roughly.
Okay, and my other question is that piece of property was actually part of our property before we bought the home. The two previous owners had sold it, but it was kind of common knowledge in this neighborhood, because as soon as we moved in, people had mentioned to me that was actually like a flood zone, like that was where all the water collected. When the home was built, did the homeowner know this? Did somebody not tell him that this is a flooded area where all the water gathers? I mean, is there a responsibility to somebody who's building a home for someone to let them know that their yard could possibly be flooded? And how often does this happen? I mean, this is the only incident that I know of. It's a 0.2% chance of flood. And I don't know what your threshold is on the percentage of that where you say we need to come in and redo something if it's a 0.2% chance of flooding.
Well, the FEMA flood map isn't really so applicable here, because they're doing large-scale flood mapping based on a storm. So they're really looking at surface water only in large waterways. They wouldn't go out and look at these small systems and things like that. So what we're interested in is, first off, it has to be initiated by a property owner requesting an improvement. And at this phase, we're just looking at what their problem is and what they're requesting. When we file our report at the first hearing, our preliminary report, we will give some opinion as to whether we think the project is warranted or not. Now, as far as Mr. Richards knowing about this before he bought the house, I can't address that.
Okay, well, I was wondering if there was somebody, I mean, if your home is sitting on a floodplain or an area that is known to flood, is it a responsibility for someone who is getting you the permits or building your home? Is it their responsibility to let that homeowner know that their property could flood? I mean, he has a swimming pool, in-ground pool, which I would imagine would cause even more of a flooding issue. I mean, if he had known that, would that have maybe changed some choices he was making? I mean, is there something that holds these people accountable for not letting the homeowner know what they're building on?
The common threshold for that is the 100-year storm, is what it's commonly called, as the 100-year storm, which is the 1%. Calling it the 1% chance of it happening in a year is the more accurate way, but a common terminology is the 100-year storm. The 0.2% storm that you're talking about is the 500-year storm, and that is not the common threshold for that type of thing. So if you build a house in the floodplain for the 100-year storm, that's when you would need flood insurance and those types of things. The 500, not so much.
So if you have a 0.2, which is based on a 500-year storm, you need to replace all of the pipes based on a 500-year storm, a 0.2? I mean, I don't know what your threshold is on replacing those.
Well, the threshold on replacing this pipe is just, we'll be looking at what's the benefit. In other words, how does it benefit the properties and the value versus the cost of the project? It won't really be applying the 500-year storm or 100-year storm. Typically, when we design a project for a road project, we're more designing for a 5-year storm. We want the road drainage to be able to handle that, and after that, it's can be done. We would not be designing an improvement here or a pipe that would handle a 100-year storm even. It will be much smaller than that. And ideally what you want to have is a surface swale over top of it. So when you get those big events, the surface water can flow. And you can see from the video, some of that's in place. I think what Mr. Richards is asking is just not to have it flood so frequently, because the pipe is just not sized even by current standards or by the standards in the 70s when the subdivision was built. That pipe wasn't sized properly. It was just available, so they tied into it.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Hey, Jim, this is Greg Richards. Can I answer her question?
Certainly.
Hey, Kim, when we bought this property, we were not disclosed, or nothing was disclosed to us about the water issues. The only thing we were made aware of was that we had to have a special septic system, and that was all that was told to us. And, if I'd have known that we would have had these water issues, I never would have built a $400,000 house here. No, I don't know what else to say about that.
Oh no, that's what we were talking about. We were wondering that because when we moved in, you guys were building the home, and I had several people who had lived in this neighborhood for quite a while had told us that was the low-lying area, and that was one of the reasons that lot, not only that it belonged to the previous owners, well, 2 previous owners, but that was why that lot was left used, was because it was the lowest point, and that the field over there was kind of like the collection basin, and that they told me this while you were building the home. So that's what my question was. Is there somebody that should have informed you, and are they
Yes.
held accountable for it? I'm not saying you. When you go and you get your permits and you get your builder and you go to do your zoning, was there someone that should have told you that your lot was flooding? Because everybody.
I would think so, but no one ever told my wife and I that we were going to have these issues, other than they told us we had to have the mound system for our septic. I accepted that. It was submitted to the county. They approved it. And then we had to get an attorney to file to change that, to allow me to put an aerator. And it was just a big bunch of steps and hurdles that we had to jump and get over to build this house. But there was never any talk or any issues of there being any water problems.
So Jim, my question.
Also, I never would have put my swimming pool, I never would put an in-ground pool in knowing that it could flood from water going across my yard.
Oh, no, I agree. That's what I'm saying. Jim, was there somebody that should have been responsible to tell Greg that this was going to happen to his property at the point, from the county or somebody?
We have told people that when homes come through for development, and on this project, I believe that I did comment that when this home came through, but it would have been from the person working on doing the application for Greg as opposed to the other one. But the problem with that is they've already purchased the lot, so they're already committed, and so it's there. Now, another thing I forgot to mention, that like on the Asbury petition, is there's a portion that allows us to adjust the assessment too based on benefit or exceptional benefit. So in the Asbury petition, there were 4 homes that flooded all the time, and they all had an extra portion of the assessment because it significantly improved their home value. So it's reasonable to assume here that we would, that Mr. Richards would probably have an extra portion of the assessment compared to just acreage in the watershed here.
Okay, because like I said, our taxes are out the roof, and if we go to sell our house, someone may look at that, and that might be a determining factor if we can sell or not. We're not planning on selling, but if that was something that was to happen, that might be a little bit of an issue where I don't want to say we're not benefiting, but people aren't seeing the benefit if you live in our home. So then they would look at it and say, well, why are my taxes this much for the next 15 years? And that could be an issue for my husband and I when we do go to sell. And that's a concern. And to make, I'll be honest, our taxes are, $10,000. That's pretty hefty price right there. So, if you up it more, that's something we need to think about. So, but no, I'm not saying Greg went and built his home and put his pool in. It's a lovely home. It's a beautiful pool. I'm saying at some point, someone should have said, look, you're going to have this problem here. And I'm just asking who dropped the ball and didn't let him know that. That's all I'm asking. So, all right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Kind of jumped the gun here. Do the commissioners have any questions?
No.
I don't. I know the neighborhood. Grew up over there.
Any other property owners have questions?
How is the golf course being accessed? I mean, are they going to be based on the benefiting amount of land that they're benefiting from, or how are they being assessed on this project?
It's exactly like that. It's based on the amount of acreage and water that you've got coming in. There are many factors, but that's going to be the primary that it comes down to.
Would anyone else like to address the commissioners?
Yes, I have a few statements. This is William Weber, 6822 Hardwood Drive. I'm in the subdivision just south of the proposed improvements. I had a question for the engineer. I always thought the storm sewerage on the east side of Cole for the golf course continued down to the 90-degree turn there south of Cole, and then went through that farm drive down to the ditch. Is that not correct?
That portion of it that we had showed in blue comes to here. Now, some of it, there could be some drainage from there does, but we were only interested in the area that drains to this.
Okay, so it does have a T or a cutoff and goes 90 degrees and goes west through those yards. That 8-inch tile.
Right, right. Yes, there's an inlet from the golf course there that puts water into that tile, yes.
Okay. I guess I would say that those photographs of the storm, I think that was a 50-year storm, if not 100-year, for all the rain that came down in that short amount of time. It filled the whole 75% of the field behind us. The ditch overflowed and filled that up, and it was it's a flood control measure right there. I don't know if that's not its intent, but that's what it does. It helps for flooding downstream. So I don't know. I think it may be premature to do these improvements for an event that only occurs once every 100 years. My third statement is the ditch is a protected stream for the Big Darby Accord, one of the protected areas. I was wondering where detention was going to be for the new improvement, how that was going to be worked, and to prevent additional flooding to this creek. And also any new improvements that would have been in place, they still would have been bypassed by that storm. There was a great amount of water coming through there, and it would have quickly filled any storm drainage or swales that you had on top, and it would pretty much look like what it was in the photographs. I don't think there was anything that could stop that. And those are my comments. Thank you.
So Jim, I have questions now.
Okay.
So this is this was a one-time occurrence. This is not something that's a regular. I mean, the viewing that we did a couple weeks ago, which is just north of this area. I mean, it's a couple miles north of there, on the street that I grew up on. That's an every spring, early summer occurrence. Those fields north of there are filled with rain and runoff, and you know, they're flooded like that every year. This was a one-time deal. This hasn't happened on a regular basis in this neighborhood.
I'll let Mr. Richards answer some frequency, but say that when we do a report for the first hearing commissioner, we can evaluate this storm sewer and say what size storm it's sized for. in the frequency and let you know that in our first report.
And I'm not questioning whether or not this needs to be done. It just shocks me that if this isn't a regular occurrence when, I mean, you know, the fields just north of there, you know, north of this area over off of Walker Road and north of Roberts Road and Morris Road and Patterson Road, that whole area up there, just a few miles north of where this is, that whole area is underwater from March through May every spring.
I suspect that this is more frequent, and but I'm not down there every time, so I'll do the math and let you know in the first report. But I think it's going to show that it's more frequent, that the outlet pipe is not sized for smaller rain events. And then Mr. Richards, if you can give us your comment.
Mr. Richards, I'd like to know. I mean, I would assume that you're petitioning because this wasn't a one-time occurrence.
That is correct. I submitted some pictures and video of the rain that we had on Mother's Day. It wasn't as much as the rain from a couple of years ago, but water was backing up out of the two catch basins on my property and was starting to flood the field. And if it would have continued to rain all day, it would have been as bad as it was a couple of years ago.
All right. I mean, I know the neighborhoods. I grew up with people and went to school with people that lived in these neighborhoods. I don't recall and hadn't paid enough attention to whether or not they got the kind of rain that my folks got out, you know, farther out in the country. But
yeah, whenever we have a heavy rain like we had on Mother's Day, those two catch basins on my property back up every time we get a heavy rain like that. So it's not just, you know, 100-year rain. It's every time we get a heavy rain, I have water backing up on my property.
Gotcha. Okay.
And Mr. Ramsey I submitted the pictures and video to Kate Radke. I don't know if she can share them with you guys, but you can see from Mother's Day how it was starting to back up.
We have them, we just weren't including everything.
Commissioners, do you have any other questions?
No.
Mr. Ramsey, did you have anything else, sir?
No, sir.
Was there anyone else in attendance that had something they would like to address to the commissioners or the engineer's office? Hearing none. Commissioners, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded, voting Commissioner O'Grady.
Yes.
Commissioner Boyce.
Yes.
Thank you, commissioners. We are adjourned at 1:37 p.m.
Thank you.
Thank you.